So why did Tumblr decide to bleed to death by cutting off its extremities? Well, it's kind of a funny story, and I'm here to tell you about child porn and content moderation. So recently, the Tumblr app was removed from the App Store for child porn offenses. They have some huge fines heading their way and potential lawsuits. And it's not an isolated incident. This has actually happened kind of a couple times. Corporations just aren't comfy with non-standardized policies. Basically, most of the internet runs by the same set of rules because most of Silicon Valley runs by the same set of rules, and they're not the same as laws. Most laws are a lot more liberal, and there's almost this like invisible censorship of the tech giants. But what is the real thing here? Well, content moderation is expensive and robots are a lie. Actual people do this stuff. Every tech company basically pays a shit ton of people to look at horrific content in a couple of seconds, make a decision about whether that video of someone chopping a head off is bad or good. And this gets kind of tricky. So basically, robots do help out, but I'll just go through it very quickly. Content teams are mostly operating on the same lockdown policies, and this is really easy, right? If you see a boob is bad, and therefore the thing is, banned. With Tumblr's more liberal policies, it's much harder to make these kind of 5-second decisions, and teams that are trained on standard policy sets need to be retrained for yours, so you can't get them under a standard contract, and the hourly rate's going to be slightly more expensive. So where do robots come in, and how is machine learning and all that buzzword kind of things? Well, I'm going to give a really quick rough, but basically there's two kinds of detection, broadly speaking, not talking about GANs and different perceptual filters and stuff. Basically it falls down into two categories of robot help: perceptual and pattern. Okay, pattern's really useful because there's a lot of images we know are porn, right? We have huge databases of porn images, and we can match these patterns, right? We can go, oh, I've seen that boob before, I've seen that boob rotated, I've seen that boob, flipped, I have seen that boob somewhere, it is a bad boob, this content is bad, right? But pattern matching only works against content that isn't too distorted, and it has to be content you've seen before. This actually works really well against child porn because the biggest barrier for child porn is the creation of it. There's actually not as much out there as people think, and the police have a pretty good database of it. So they have a set of hashes, and if you run a company that deals with content, you can basically plug into this database and you can basically scan for this kind of content and filter it out. And obviously it won't detect any new content, but it'll catch the plethora of stuff we already know about. And so that handles a lot of stuff, and that also works for sort of generalized porn, and there are generalized databases for pattern matching. And there's only so many things, right? But pattern matching, as the database gets bigger, it gets more expensive, and it only works against things you've seen, and it's not great. So this is where perceptual filtering comes in. So this is like machine learning and all the hot newness. This is where you show a computer like a million images of boobs, and it basically conceptualizes the mathematical representation of a boob, and it goes mostly on context cues. I'm mostly certain that's a boob. I'm pretty sure that's a boob. Get a human to look at it because I think it's a boob. And that's kind of how it works. And they also are really good at things like skin detection. I mean, assuming you're white, of course, because we never train these models on enough diverse groups. So yeah, that's a whole nother mess. But yeah, so machines are good for flagging that kind of broad content. Also, audio is much easier for machines to go. This is why YouTube much prefers to ding you with Content ID on audio rather than video, because the amount you can fuzz audio up without it becoming unrecognizable to the human ear is a lot lower than the amount you can fuzz up images. Like, you can flip images, you can skew images, you can do all kinds of things to images, color shift images, which actually is a whole complex class of problem with hue shifting and stuff. And the human brain's really good at going, hey, that's a boob. And the computer's like, where's the boob? And it can't spot it, right? It's kind of like fucked up. So at the end of the day, pretty much every company is paying the same middle management, like outsourcing in some third world country, Some of it is like local, like there's huge call center like buildings that do this, but a lot of it's outsourced just because it's like $1 an hour for a lot of the place to look at like vile images and stuff. And you'll have like content experts who every day they just look at images of boobs, or every day they look at images of beheadings. Like they have a specialty. It's horrific. There's great stories out there. Read them. Tumblr's more open and complex policy just didn't match the bog standard policy that 99% of tech companies use, and as a result, they were probably getting a more expensive rate. They're now adopting the policy that pretty much everyone uses, and there's this invisible censorship that the internet is applying because, if you're posting something to YouTube, if you're posting it to Facebook, if you're posting it to, well, now Tumblr, basically any of these social media sites, you're basically complying to this invisible blanket of censorship that Silicon Valley has agreed you must comply by. So, yeah, Tumblr's decided to kill anything that makes it unique and interesting and go along with the program. So goodbye, Tumblr. The shitposting was fun. And this is why the indie web is important, guys. And I'm going to have a link down below. You should totally check out the indie web stuff. It is important. It is super important because I like boobs. And I want to keep boobs on the internet. And you should too. Or, whatever you're into. Bye-bye.